Hey.
Hello, hello. Welcome
Good to
back.
see everybody. Hey, Rosanna, so glad to have you here.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So, if you're just joining us or just joining us again, this is the podcast of Hannah McDonald and Dave McDonald, where we talk about what old people think and what young people need to know. It is called X2Z. You can find us on the web at x2z.org. So, Hannah, I'm going to give a quick introduction to Rosanna, and then we'll see where it goes from there. I make this all up as we go, so there's no scripting involved. So, guys, today we have with us Rosana Preston. Rosanna received the Lifetime Achievement Award at the National Recruiting and Retention Seminar just recently, and we're super proud to have her with us. Rosanna works at Rosedale Group and has been there a little while. And so I'm going to let Rosanna tell us a little bit of the backstory. Rosedale Group is a large, still family-owned company in Canada with facilities in the U.S. Rosanna, thank you so much for joining us and being willing to add your credibility to the craziness that Hannah and I are trying to produce here. But really interested in hearing from you a little bit about recruiting, a little bit about your career at Rosedale, and just kind of working through a couple of questions with you. Can you just tell us a little bit about how did you come to work at Rosedale, and how long have you been with them, and what is your role there? Help people understand who you are a little bit.
Well, I originally started, I'm going to just take you back a little bit to my initiation into the industry,
Sure.
which was prior to Rosedale. And I guess I was undecided as to a career choice. And a very good friend of mine, her dad was a senior driver. And he said, well, I know there's a spot opened up at our Toronto terminal. This was a large LTL carrier. And why don't you come on in and apply? And I said, well, all right, I'll do that. And I went in and I applied. It was a clerical position and I got the job. I think probably he recommended me, and that probably was one of the reasons I got the job, because I didn't have any experience. And I started to work there at the terminal. And I believe that working at the actual truck terminal is one of the reasons why my career has been a successful career, as opposed to working in head office. And the reason that I'm saying that is because the terminal offered me the opportunity to work in many areas. And those areas included safety and recruiting and administration, operations, training and development, and so on. And that was the foundation of my beginning in the trucking industry. They also helped to shape the cornerstones that I have today that are very strong, and that I want to always encourage respect. I want to always encourage a workplace that is safe for everyone and that promotes and encourages growth. And that's what happened to me. I was able to continue to grow. I left that organization and applied for a job, and the job was at Rosedale. And that was 33 years ago. So I have been with Rosedale, and which is owned by Rolla Uloth, and I have been with Rosedale and the Uloth family for 33 years.
Wow. So you're a real job hopper.
Yes.
You bounce around all over the place.
Terrible habit, yes.
Climbing the corporate ladder, one company at a time. What a neat thing to spend 33 years with a company, and as you said, interestingly, a family. Like, obviously, there's a connection between you and Rosedale, but there's also, just from the way you phrase that, a connection between you and the Uloth family. Can you tell me how those two things are different, but also the same?
Well, they're different in the fact that it's not a huge corporation. So you really get to know people and you get to know the family, because if I look at the family's here every day. And so they're not managing in absentia. They are here. They are active. I mean, Rolly comes into the office every day, as does Rhoda and Ron. So you can't help but build relationships when you're working with people for so long. And also you get to know, which is kind of, I think it's kind of cool because you get to know people well enough. So for example, if we need something and I go in and to Rolly's office and say, good morning, how are you? And he doesn't appear to be in a happy mood, I know that's not the day to ask. So
Put
but
that idea in your pocket.
yes, come back tomorrow. You know that because you know who you work with, you know their personalities, and you know what they're all about. And I think that, you know, in modern world, they're saying, oh, you should move every 5 years and you should do this and you should do that. And there's no question there's merit to that. But I don't think you can discount the merit, particularly if it's a good company and it's a progressive company and you're allowed to grow and you have a seat at the table. So your voice matters. And that's what makes it enjoyable. That's what makes you love to come to work. And I also think, just going back to the first opportunity, I'm a good example of success not requiring perfect knowledge. I didn't know a thing about the trucking industry. I took the chance and I became the person I am today. And I continue to grow and learn every day.
Right. And go ahead, Hannah.
I was just going to ask, as you were transitioning from your first role at the company, or at your first company, to your later role at your second company at Rosedale, what was your decision making process like when you were deciding to stay in transportation? Because you said that you kind of got a ton of different experience in a bunch of different areas. At the end of that, you could have kind of had two different lines of thought. You could have gone, okay, I've seen this, I've done this, I'm ready to move on and try something different. Or you could have gone, wow, what an experience, now I want to dive deeper. How did you decide to choose to dive deeper? What about it was attractive to you?
Well, when I left the first company, I was in that state of mind where I think I need to try something different. And I had
Okay.
a bit of a lag time between leaving there and coming here. And I went out into the job market and I interviewed for many positions. One was with the Ministry of Transportation. One was with the WSIB. I mean, I still kind of connected, but not exactly in the operation. And every time I left an interview, I didn't leave it with that feeling like, wow, I really want that job. And then there was a blind ad, and it's a funny story that gets told here. There was a blind ad put in and said profitable LTL carrier looking for assistance for the president. And I thought, oh, geez, I don't think I know any real profitable LTL carriers. Let me go and see. Let me go and see who this is. And so I came for an interview, and the first one was with an agency, and I was a little bit ambivalent. And then the second one, they called me back to meet the owner. And then I came in and I was interviewed by Rolly, and I knew that regardless of what my head was saying, try something different, my heart wanted to be here.
That's so great. There's so much in that. One, thank you for a shout out to agencies that add value to organizations and make good introductions. Like how great a testimony is that an agency got you a job at a spot where you stayed for 33 years. The whole industry should be using you as an example for why agencies exist. And that was a great story. Thank you so much for that. That just encourages us in what we do every day. But also, from what you said, it sounds like there was a pretty immediate connection with Rolly and a respect for him. And like, hey, I have some background in this, but also this is a guy I could like and who was going to help you build your, core principles of respect, safety, and growth. It sounded like that was maybe something you guys hit on pretty early on together. Is that fair to say?
Very much so. It was an immediate likability. He liked me and I liked him. And Rolly does an interview kind of funny because he does a lot of talking. And so it gets you the opportunity to know you know, what's behind the face. So when he was telling me about his company and the values and what he was looking for, I thought, yeah, I want to work here. I do want to work here.
Mm, that's really good. That's really good. So that leads us kind of into our next question, which is, what does every four-wheeler need to know? You had a lot of different opportunities to sit in a lot of different spaces. You've learned a lot about transportation kind of from the whole perspective, whether it's on the road or what the actual industry is like. What do you think that the average four-wheeler needs to know about transportation?
Well, I think one of the things I would say right away is to understand this to safety and the stopping distance for trucks. And, you know, we kind of focused in some of our training that trucks have four main blind spots. And the first one is directly behind the vehicle. And you sometimes see that slogan, if you can't see our mirrors, we can't see you.
Mhm.
Very true, right? I always thought that was a good slogan. And then 2 and 3 along the sides of the vehicle, the areas in which the mirrors are angled, and they that that angle they will miss a truck or they will miss a car. Okay, so you lose one there. And then directly in front of the truck, and believe it or not, some people zip right in front of a truck and then the driver can't see the car over the hood. So those would be four things I think people have to really understand. I think also understanding that trucks need space to stop. And so the knowledge of stopping distance for trucks is definitely another important piece. Oftentimes, trucks have gross weights of 80,000 pounds or over. So, you know, this how quickly a truck can stop depends on the speed it's going, the weight it's carrying, the road conditions, and the safety of the vehicle, i.e., good tires, you know, brakes, and so on.
Yeah.
So they can't stop or maneuver the same way that a car can. And I think people have to realize that.
Mm.
So,
We
so important. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
just this last weekend, Dad and I drove down. We were in Barrie for the PMTC conference, and then we were coming back here to Orlando, and we were driving his boat to my dock, which I'm so thankful for, and it's going to be great. But my gosh, I don't even know how much that would weigh, but I can't imagine 80,000 pounds, because even just trying to stop with the trailer and the boat for those 3 days worth of driving, I think it took us about 30 hours. I mean, I've always had a massive respect for drivers, don't get me wrong, but even more so after a 3-day trip with that much weight. And I was just like, wow, I can't even really comprehend what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And people just have no idea how much it takes them to stop. Like the pressure that's behind your back just as you're going was alarming to me.
Right.
Oh, yeah. From a logic perspective, you would think people would get it, but they don't.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Really,
Well,
they don't.
they don't. It's so interesting. Like, just for me, like I hired thousands of truck drivers over 20 years in the business. I have so many relationships with truck drivers, and I respect them so highly. I am deathly afraid of pulling a trailer. And it doesn't make any sense that a person that has so many people in the business that are good at it, I haven't figured out how to get comfortable with it. But it was very nerve-wracking for me to do that. My boat and trailer weigh like 5,000 pounds. It's not that significant. When we put the gas in the boat for the last hour, you could feel the difference in the weight of it. It was so, but what we
Significant.
what it
It
was
might not have been significant, but it felt significant.
Yeah. And so, and you get the slosh, and you get a little bit more slosh in with that. And so that creates inertia, or I don't know, Newton would have a law that explains exactly what's going on there, but I don't remember what it was. Sorry, Mr. Robinson. I did not listen in grade 11 physics. But what I find is when I'm driving like that, I'm hyper aware of what's going on around me. And when I'm driving my car or my pickup truck without it, I am so lackadaisical and so humdrum about the safety around me. And I really shouldn't be. I really should be much more attentive. And so like Hannah took like I had no devices. I wasn't even actually allowed to change the radio station on the touchscreen because once I did and the car went boo and we both
The
got freaked
trailer
out.
went like this.
Yes, yeah, and that's scary, isn't it?
Oh,
It really is.
very frightening. And so one of the things we saw on the way down was we saw a flatbed driver with probably his load was no taller than 12 inches, but it was very clearly like an iron casted product, and you could tell that this truck was at its weight capacity, even though the load was so small and compact.
Mhm.
And most people around would think that that was just a light truck and that they'd be able to stop because they don't see what's on it. But because we were able to see what's on it and we have a little bit of industry knowledge, we could tell that that guy was like really doing his all to keep just the vehicle under control and going. He was a very safe operator. It was an interesting perspective. And I think about that stopping distance is a big deal. We had a truck for our Christmas party last year. We had one of our clients bring a truck by the office and had everybody climb up into the truck and, see the safety zones and kind of, we had people walking in front of the truck so they could see what could be seen for the nose of the truck and stuff. And it was just a really eye-opening experience for a lot of our junior recruiters that don't have the industry knowledge.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
super important that people understand that.
And I also think like people don't understand, or and I mean, I guess nor should they, but drivers are also, they have to be paying attention to their hours of service and whether they're going into the US, then they're following one set of rules. If they're here in Canada, there's following a second. And so I like to think of them as masters of time management because they have to follow the rules of the road, stay within the hours of service, still get their freight delivered on schedule, and they're balancing all of those things. And I don't I guess the general public may not realize all of the things that the driver has to manage and do in a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is it's hard to understand what other people are going through unless you walk a mile in their shoes. Like we want to be gracious about that, but we also want to be promoting an environment where people are gaining some understanding of the industry, and that's really why we asked the question. Drivers deserve our deep respect and what they do, not just bringing us everything that we have in our household, all those beautiful frames behind you, that nice desk, the TV behind me, the chair that Hannah's sitting in, everything that we have in our homes or our offices came to us through a truck at some point.
That's right.
And so remembering that is important, but also just, respecting the safety that they provide on the roads. And I love that that's one of your core principles, both respect and safety, respect for the drivers and giving them the opportunity to run safely and not being so demanding of them. And there's, go ahead, Ann.
I was going to ask, how did those pillars come to be? How did they become the staples in your life that are kind of like the ones that you're stamping on?
Well, I was very fortunate in my first job to work for a company, and I don't like to say this because you're supposed to have goals, but remember, I was just fresh going into an industry that I knew nothing about. I was very blessed to have people around me that recognized that I had talents that I didn't even know I had. So, I mean, it was a case where I was doing one job and someone came and said, you know, the driver supervisor needs some help. Would you like to go and work with him? And you'll be involved in hiring owner operators. You'll be involved in interviewing and screening, and we'll train you. I said, hey, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. And off I went. And then, you know, shortly thereafter, I mean, I was there over 20 years, so I make it sound very short, but I would do something for a while. And then after a while, someone else would come, another manager would come and say, you know, we could really use your expertise in this area. And I mean, one of those jobs included being, today it would be called the administrative assistant to the manager. And I said, yeah, I'll try that. So I was actually an EA for a little while and working directly for him. But each time it was not something that I put my hand up and said, I'd like to do that. It was when I was approached. So here at Rosedale, I try and do those same things. I try and recognize talent and say, you know, maybe we could move you here. Would you like to learn a little bit about this? And I was always treated with respect, which I have to say in the 70s in the trucking industry, that was a tough go. But I was always treated well and with respect. So again, that became another cornerstone to make sure that we treat people with respect. We offer opportunities for growth. We always try and promote from within. If we can promote and train at the same time, like some jobs you need somebody with experience, some jobs you can ease someone in. Those are some of the things that we do every day in all the branches. So that's another cornerstone, is moving people along and making sure that we're getting the best out of them, and they in turn then have great potential to do something different. Yeah.
Yeah. Making sure that you get the most out of your people, and to their advantage, not to your advantage.
Absolutely.
Bringing the most out of them.
That's the hallmark of a good manager, right? Is seeing potential and helping them realize that potential in a way that they may have not perceived.
That's right. I agree.
So I really like what you had to say there. Thanks for sharing that. There's so many bunny trails I want to follow, but I want to ask this question. What should young adults and teens know about transportation as they consider getting their first jobs, like you did out of high school or college? What should young people be looking for, and why should they give transportation a second look if they've never looked at it before?
Well, I think transportation is a career path that has exponential growth and opportunity. And, you know, when the economy grows, so does transport. And when transport grows, so does the economy. It's a hand in hand. There's many opportunities to get into the trucking business. And that starts with, let's say, a driver. If an individual wants to become a professional road driver, then he or she should do some research, find a good school for entry-level training, and remembering that cheapest and easy isn't always the best.
Sure. And can I just add to that, Rosanna?
Sure.
If you're looking for a good school, there's a great one in Caledonia called KRTS. They're my favorite school. They're very expensive because they're very great.
That's right.
And you should check them out if you don't know them. So sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. And just to speak to them for a minute, on several occasions, and this goes to show you the thought process that goes into that school. We were asked to speak to classrooms of drivers that were in that school wanting to become drivers. That's why they were there. And to speak to them and to answer any questions that they had about the industry and about the life of a driver. And so hopefully one of them may have decided to come to Rosedale. But at the very minimum, they got to hear from industry people the reality, not glossed over, but the reality of what it is to be a highway driver or city driver. So we did quite a few speeches at that school. And it was fun. I liked doing that. I liked to talk and answering their questions, answering them honestly. You know, like someone said, well, will I be driving at night? Yes, you will. You know, and how do you feel about that? You know, and just different aspects of the job. I think that going to a good school and then finding a company that'll give you mentorship is the perfect storm. That's great. You know, if you can get both of those things, you're doing well. And I also believe that the pandemic may have given the average person greater insight into the transportation industry. People take for granted that when they go to the store, their groceries are on the shelf, the products that they want to buy, the parts are in the store, floor covering is there. And it became very evident that if trucks were not moving, those shelves were going to be bare. And I don't think people always put those two things together. And products would have been unavailable and stock scarce. So when drivers, if you remember at that period of time, drivers became the heroes. You know, they were celebrated for their efforts and what they were doing. And I think that brought attention to the industry. And hopefully some young people, young adults will kind of remember that and at least be intrigued enough to go and make some inquiries and see if it's something that they would like to do. I think we are always in the background of providing other industries what they need. And when the economy is growing, so is the trucking industry growing. It's kind of hand in hand because very seldom is what's needed in the right spot. So whether it's raw materials, food, manufacturing, it's over here, but we need it over here. How's it going to get there? So, you know, it's going to get there by truck. And that's that side of it. I mean, our industry enables the products to move from one place to another. It's essential for the economy, as I've already said. And I think then if you start to inquire, you'll see that, okay, well, there's opportunities in traffic, there's opportunities in sales, there's opportunities in operations. I can find a spot here and springboard to another spot if it's an industry I like. I don't know today how many other jobs offer that. And I wouldn't know because I've only worked in this industry.
Sure.
But being able to have such a variety to pick from, you know, we have people that were in operations that are now in sales. They've decided they want to go on a sales path. And I think that that's very, very important because if you love what you do, you're not going to work. You're happy. You love what you do, it's not work. And I think if you have the opportunity to test those waters in so many areas, I think that's a very good start to a career.
Sure.
Absolutely.
That's really great.
Can
I jump in and then I'll
absolutely.
bring you back? One of the things that you said that really stuck out to me is a good school, a good mentorship program combined can make a great entry point for people into the industry. I was talking with my wife yesterday, who is down in Wisconsin visiting her family, and her brother is a trained 310T mechanic who spent 10 years in a truck. And now he'd stepped out of the industry and was working as an arborist. He's having some health concerns going on, and trucking is always available to him. And one of the things that we see in the agency business, people are like, well, like how, you know, you must be only putting together new drivers. So like, no, most of our drivers have more than 10 years of experience. Most of the guys that we put out to work are returning to trucking, not necessarily starting in trucking. And so there's a great safety net in having your commercial driver's license that is, you always have a way to make a living.
Absolutely.
Because there's always a good job for a truck driver, someone who's safety conscious, someone who's really a professional in the way they approach it. Those guys always have jobs. Guys and ladies always have jobs available to them. And that's a super great thing to have, because honestly, over the next 15 years, we don't know how AI is going to impact the roles of recruiters or human resources people or accountants or lots of different roles. But truck drivers, there's going to be people delivering to stores every day
Absolutely.
for my whole lifetime, and I believe my kids' lifetime.
Oh, I absolutely. And I think, back to your comment about young people, I think young adults and teens would find that there's a lot of facets, which I've already touched on with our industry, and the career could include, operations and warehousing, dispatching, safety, HR, sales, and so on. And there are also courses that can be taken as well. So your practical with your educational background can come into play. Places like the Canadian Institute of Traffic and Transportation. And when you complete that course, you have a CITT designation. The Ontario Trucking Association puts on leadership courses. And so there's many things that you can do to combine, as I said, the practical with improving your career path by taking some courses as well. And we sponsor those. Like if any of our people, it's one of our company benefits, wants to take a course that's related to our industry, then Rosedale will cover the cost of that. I mean, within reason. We don't do Harvard, but but if someone wants to take a course, we certainly support that.
That's great. That's great that you give back to your employees and help them in that process. It's so valuable. So valuable. Hannah, did you have a question?
I was just going to ask what you think the best entry point is, because there's, like you said, there's sales, there's operations, there's safety, there's so many. But for somebody who's just maybe considering transportation, and they don't necessarily think they want to sit in a truck, where do you think the best place to come into the industry is at a ground level, where you can kind of learn a little bit, see what it's like, get your hands messy? Do you think that would be in the office? Do you think that you said you really enjoyed your time not in the office? So I was just curious for that first person who's just starting to think about it.
Well, if I look at, and my opinion is based on my experience. When we started speaking, I said I believe that my career is as successful because I started in the actual truck terminal. There was two buildings. There was a very large truck terminal with, I think, 80 doors or 90 doors, and the offices were in the middle. So every morning you had to walk down the dock and kind of dodge the forklifts. And then there was our head office, and that was corporate. And I've always felt that head office, I mean, you got to be great in accounts payable or accounts receivable or payroll, but you could take those skills and move them over to a manufacturer company, because payroll and accounts receivable and accounts payable is the same. It's just a different industry. If you're in the transportation industry and you're fortunate enough to get into, see, Rosedale, this building is both the truck terminal and the head office. So our positions here are the positions that we speak of with. So you want to get in, I can give you an example. We have two dispatchers today in our city department that they're females, and they came in with clerical type of roles. Okay, they came in with clerical and they sat in the city dispatch department. They're with the dispatchers, and they showed great ability and aptitude. And so they were able then to work their way into training. The dispatch manager gave them a certain number of drivers to manage during the day, pickups, deliveries, watch on the computer, and so on and so forth. And today they've actually gone into being full-fledged dispatchers. So I think if it depends on what you want, if you want that corporate head office type of position within the industry, they're there. But if you want to learn, I call it the foundation or the grassroots, then you're going to look for more of an operational operational safety, warehousing. You're going to look in that area because then you can decide, okay, I'm going to do this. And as soon as there's an opening, you can go into another area. And
Mhm.
I think that's where your knowledge really expands.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to imagine, and Rosanna, I'm interested in your opinion on this theory, that the closer you are in any career, the closer you are to the actual engine of the organization.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whether
I found this on the web. So the closer you are in any.
sorry, Siri just got angry with me for a moment and started talking. So I'm just gonna
You
pause.
revamp yourself. You have to imagine that.
Right. You, Rosanna, one of the questions I wanted to ask you was, in light of your experience being close to the transportation operations early on, do you feel like generally it's best for employees in their career path to get at least some exposure to the daily ops, the real engine that runs the business? So the closer you can get to the truck, the more you're going to know about Rosedale. The closer you get to the furnace, the more you're going to know about a foundry. The closer you get to the animals, the better you're going to be in an agribusiness. Like if you have that real frontline touch where the money is actually made, even if you're an accountant, if you've had that frontline experience, you create better organizational value. And when it comes time for making difficult decisions, somebody who has shown themselves able to wear multiple hats is more valuable to the organization as a whole than somebody who's really streamlined in a academic or knowledge-based understanding of the business. Does that make sense to you?
It does, and I agree with you 100%. I think you get to know, and it doesn't necessarily mean you become an expert, but you get a broad brush if you're not necessarily connected to that department. Like I've never been a highway dispatcher, but I know what my highway team does. I know if there's a question about anything to do with that, I know what department to go to and where to seek the knowledge, where to get the answer that I need. So I think if you're close to the operation, it gives you it gives you that knowledge of maybe you don't have the answer, but it's really important that you know where to get it. And just to speak to that a little bit, again, when Rosedale has a lot of tenure. Our employees have been with us a long time, and the tenure gives you that knowledge that, you know what, I lost my train of thought.
That's okay. We're
Sorry.
getting to the end. Sometimes when you get to the end, it's like really hard. You're
Okay,
doing
so
good.
what was the question? Where were we? You were asking.
If you is it better to get closer to the like the meat of the business than it is like just the more you do it, will you have more knowledge? I think was the question.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm ready. Yes, I think it's important if you want to make this your career path. I think it's important to be where the engine is, because this is the engine. You know, the dispatch is here, the warehouse is here, this is safety department is here, the maintenance department is here. This is the engine. Okay, customer service, my team downstairs, they're here, and so you get that feel for what's going on with the customers. And I think that is very, very important. And one of the problems as we exit the industry, you know, and I was mentioning we have a lot of tenure, that is one thing that's hard to replace, because you have a lot of people who just know. And they know because they've been here, and they know because they've been involved, and they know where all the nooks and the crannies, and they know where to go to get. And so you get someone else that comes in, you've lost that knowledge, you know, of being with an organization, understanding the quirks, if you want to call them, some of the quirks, or understanding, okay, I know the right guy to go ask. Let's go ask the Western dispatcher. You know, so that's one thing that's not on a job profile. And that's one thing that you simply learn because of your years of experience and your years of being with the organization. And that's the one thing that's hard to replace when people wind up retiring or quitting.
Sure. Yeah, I don't want to ask you a bunch of questions out of turn with what we prepped you for, but that comment really leads me to just one more question, if we can. When what's the ideal amount of time for someone to give you notice that they're preparing to retire? You guys have lots of people with tenure. What's that?
So that's just not the question I thought you were going to ask.
I changed
your left loop.
I changed it up in the middle.
I like it. Good.
If like, this is a question that people in human research don't really talk about, but like there's so much information to be transitioned from one person to the next, that like if you've got somebody who's got 10 years or more experience in the company and maybe even in a role, how much time do you need to get the information out of their head that isn't otherwise in the standard operating procedures that generally go to run the organization?
Well, that's a very good question. And I happen to have a really good example, as luck would have it. We have a sales associate. He's been with us many, 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 many years. I think he's been here longer than me. And he has finally decided that it's time to retire. He is retiring in December. And he talked to our sales team and he told them, and he gave us a written letter. And now our sales manager is with him. She went with him, I think 2 weeks ago, and called together on the major customers that he has and let the customers know that he was going to be retiring in December. And the premise of their visit was to let them know, but also to show them the respect, because they've been working with this particular guy for many, many, many years. These are floor covering customers that have been with us forever. And so they were able to hear the news personally from Rhoda. Rhoda went with Andre, and they were so impressed by that respect that we showed them as long-term customers. Now, that also, with such a long window, that's also, I think they're going to Quebec City in a couple of weeks, and they're going to meet with those customers. And they met with the customers in Montreal. In the case like that, Andre giving us, you know, from now until December is great, because we have lots of time to plan to replace him, and we have lots of time to go and see the customers. And the customers, to a one, were so awed by the respect that was being shown to them. You know, we're telling you that this guy you've been working with for X number of years is now going. And someone asked, well, who's replacing him? And we said, we haven't even gotten that far yet. Our first thought was to let you all know. Now we'll work on a replacement. So in that example, having such a big lead time, it was fantastic. Do you always get that? Usually never. So, I mean, most people will give you 2 weeks, and that's just enough for the bare bones to know the intricacies of what they were doing. Some people will give you a month, but even then, like if you talk about me, or even the HR manager, she's been here almost 25 years. So when I finally leave, she knows an awful lot about things because she's been here so long. But it's really when someone leaves and they're replaced by someone that's either new to the industry but may have their HR degree, or they're in the industry with an HR degree, but I think each company has its own personality. Rosedale runs its way, other carriers run that, and that will take 6 months to a year for a new person to figure out.
For sure. Well, there's two elements to that. There's the institutional knowledge that is just contained. It's really only absorbed by being part of the institution.
Yes.
But I really like what you've done with your salesperson. And there's a term that I use. I don't really remember even where it came from. Probably a book I read, but the concept of relational equity, where your salesperson has relational equity with all of those clients that is partly related to the service that Rosedale provides, but it's also partly related to the relationship that he has had by calling on them and by providing good service through the Rosedale group.
Yes.
And so by transitioning that relational equity up into the owners group to Rhoda, that's just a stroke of genius in the way you guys have. That's really is a business case for how to do that transition. And I like that you've waited with the replacement salesperson to be like, yeah, that's the next, like that's further down the road. But cementing our corporate relationship with you as a client, that's our primary focus. And we want you to know that you're heard, you're seen, and you're valued from corporation to not just from the salesperson, but from the company to the company and the company to the individual.
Yes, some of the customers consider it quite an honor.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really great. That's really great. Hannah, do you have any other questions for Rosana?
I do not at this moment. Thank you so much for taking some time to sit down with us. I know that it was not the easiest to connect, but this has been such a lovely conversation.
Yes, and I appreciate it very much, and I enjoyed the questions and hope I was able to provide some insight and some answers for you. You know, it's an interesting topic and one I'm sure that we could talk about all day, but we can't do that. So, so I really appreciate you singling me out and honoring me with this opportunity.
Well, Rosanna, your reputation goes before you as the award recipient, very well deserved, and I'm glad that you had that opportunity this year. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and thank you for being willing to play along with the Russian roulette of questions by Dave McDonald. So really, we do appreciate you playing along with us and just kind of going through it. You're so well prepared and well spoken. We really do appreciate it. This is X to Z, where old Dave speaks truth to young Hannah, and hopefully you guys learn something in the middle. Check us out, x2z.org. Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye for next time.
Bye-bye.
See ya.